The stars hung silent and cold against the endless black. In the command center of the Stellar Collective's flagship, Commander Tyke stood with his three-fingered hands clasped behind his back, his scaled skin reflecting the blue glow of holographic displays that surrounded him. "Is this truly the planet?" he asked, his voice carrying the distinct clicking undertone of his species. "Yes, Commander," replied his science officer. "The humans call it Earth, rich in water, minerals, and biological diversity. Their technology is advancing quickly, but still primitive compared to ours." Tyke studied the blue-green world spinning slowly in the display. The collective had conquered 17 worlds in the past cycle alone. Each conquest followed the same pattern: arrive, demonstrate overwhelming force, accept surrender, and integrate the survivors into the labor pools. It was efficient. It was tradition. "Their military capabilities?" Tyke asked, watching clouds swirl across Earth's atmosphere. "Rudimentary, combustion weapons, nuclear arsenals that would damage their own environment more than our ships. No meaningful space defense systems," the tactical officer reported, scrolling through data collected by their long-range probes. "They fight among themselves constantly, divided into nearly 200 territorial groups they call nations." Tyke nodded with satisfaction. "Perfect. We'll follow standard protocol. Send the advance fleet. I want detailed scans of their population, centers, and military installations." What the collective didn't realize was that humans had been watching the skies for centuries, dreaming of contact while simultaneously fearing it. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Jin frowned at her monitor. The anomalous readings had begun 3 days ago: subtle disturbances in the asteroid belt, strange radio bursts near Jupiter, and now distinct energy signatures approaching Mars. "Run the analysis again," she told her team, pushing her glasses up her nose. "And someone get Director Han on the line." The young technician beside her looked up with wide eyes. "You think it's really them? Visitors?" Dr. Jin hesitated before answering. 20 years she'd worked in this facility, searching the stars for signs of intelligent life. Now that the evidence was blinking on her screen, she felt only dread. "Not visitors," she said quietly. "When you travel with that many ships, you're not coming to visit." Within hours, observatories around the world began detecting the same anomalies. What had been the world's best-kept secret for decades suddenly became impossible to hide. The Deep Space Monitoring Network, built in secret through international cooperation after a mysterious signal from the Kuiper Belt in 2031, was now tracking multiple objects moving toward Earth at speeds that defied human engineering. In Washington, Beijing, Moscow, New Delhi, and other capitals, leaders were awakened with the news humanity had both hoped for and feared. We are not alone, and they are coming. The United Defense Council convened virtually with unprecedented attendance. Faces appeared on screens, some determined, others visibly afraid. The Secretary General looked exhausted, his tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. "The approaching vessels will reach Earth orbit in approximately 72 hours, he announced. "Dr. Jin, please brief everyone on what we know." Dr. Jin shared her screen. 12 large vessels and approximately 30 smaller craft. Based on their energy output and movement patterns, they possess technology far beyond our current capabilities. They've made no attempt to communicate or hide their approach. "Could it be peaceful?" asked the representative from Brazil. Dr. Han, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward into his camera. "Would you cross an ocean in silence with a battle fleet to say hello to people you've never met?" The room fell silent. "We need to decide now," Dr. Jin continued. "Do we attempt communication first or activate the Aegis Protocol?" For decades, nations had been secretly diverting defense funds to a project most world leaders believed was merely theoretical, a planetary defense system hidden in plain sight. What the public thought were satellite upgrades, new space telescopes, and orbital communication arrays were actually components of Earth's last-ditch defense system. "We should try talking first," suggested someone. "Perhaps they've been monitoring our broadcasts," interrupted Dr. Jin. "They know our languages, our culture, our weaknesses. They've been watching us for years. If they wanted to talk, they would have reached out before bringing their fleet." In a secure bunker beneath Seoul, Colonel Yoon was already mobilizing. His team, specialists trained for a day most people thought would never come. His phone rang. "It's time," said the voice on the other end. "Aegis is greenlit. Get your people to the launch sites." Around the world, similar calls were being made. Scientists who had been dismissed as paranoid, military personnel assigned to theoretical response teams, and engineers who had built technology decades ahead of what the public knew existed, all moved into action under protocols established after evidence of the first scout ship had been recovered from the Arctic in 2029. As the collective's fleet approached Earth's moon, Commander Tyke was surprised by the lack of reaction from the planet below. Their sensors showed increased communications and some military movements, but nothing suggesting they had even detected the fleet's approach. "Primitive indeed," he mused. "Prepare the first demonstration. Target their largest military installation in the region they call Pacific. Once they see a fraction of our power, they'll understand resistance is pointless." Just then, his communications officer looked up with confusion. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, in over 50 different languages." "Put it through," Tyke ordered, expecting pleas for mercy. Instead, a simple message played throughout the command center. "We see you. Turn back. This is your only warning." Tyke laughed, joined by his officers. The audacity of these creatures was almost admirable. "They see us," he replied mockingly, "but they don't understand what they're seeing. Continue approach. They'll learn. Soon enough." What Tyke couldn't know was that beneath the oceans, hidden in mountain ranges disguised as weather stations and concealed in orbit among communication satellites, humanity's secret defenses were powering up. Earth was far from defenseless. It was armed with technology reverse-engineered from the very species now approaching. And unlike other worlds the collective had conquered, humans had been preparing for this day, not just for decades, but through centuries of imagining this exact scenario in their stories, films, and games. They were ready. "They're ignoring us," Captain Sue reported, her voice steady despite the tension filling the command center. Screens around the room displayed the alien fleet's continued approach, now passing the lunar orbit. The gathered military and political leaders watched in silence as Earth's first and only warning went unheeded. President Lee rubbed his temples. "So we have our answer." For decades, humanity had debated how first contact might unfold. Would aliens come in peace or with hostile intent? The optimists had always outnumbered the pessimists in public discourse, but privately governments had prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. "All Aegis stations report ready status," announced General Park, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of his tablet. "Defense grid is at 98% capacity. Orbital platforms are aligned and awaiting final authorization." Around the table sat representatives from every continent, rivals and allies alike, now united by a threat none of them had truly believed would materialize in their lifetimes. The revelation that world governments had been secretly collaborating on planetary defense for decades would have caused international outrage just days ago. Now it seemed like foresight bordering on miraculous. "Show me the primary target again," requested Director Hyun, the civilian head of the Global Defense Initiative. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the table, showing the largest alien vessel. It was unlike anything humans had designed. Not sleek or aerodynamic, but angular and asymmetrical, with strange protrusions that seemed to serve no obvious purpose. Scans indicated it was nearly 2 kilometers in length. "Their technology is advanced," Dr. Jin explained, "but not incomprehensible. The recovered scout ship from the Arctic gave us crucial insights. They rely heavily on particle beam weapons and gravitational manipulation for both offense and defense. And you're certain our countermeasures will work?" asked the British Prime Minister, voicing the doubt everyone felt. Dr. Jin exchanged glances with Professor Kang, who had dedicated her life to understanding alien technology since the scout ship recovery. "As certain as we can be without having tested them against actual alien weaponry," Professor Kang answered honestly. "The principles are sound. Our systems were designed specifically to counteract what we learned from their technology. Across the planet, civilians remained largely unaware of the full danger approaching. Governments had acknowledged the presence of unidentified objects in the solar system, but downplayed the threat to prevent panic. Still, people sensed something momentous was happening. Social media buzzed with theories, religious leaders called for prayer, and families gathered close to their loved ones, drawn together by an instinctive human response to uncertainty. In his apartment in Singapore, 12-year-old Jay watched the night sky through his telescope. His father stood behind, him a hand on his shoulder. "Do you think they're friendly, Dad?" Jay asked. His father, an engineer who had unknowingly contributed components to the Aegis system through his work, looked up at the stars with worry he tried to hide. "I hope so," he answered, "but people aren't always friendly to those who are different, and I don't expect aliens would be much different." On the Collective's command ship, Commander Tyke reviewed the final assault plan. The initial strike would target military bases near what humans called the Pacific Ocean, followed by demonstrations against major population centers, not to destroy them, but to show the futility of resistance. It was a strategy that had worked on 17 other worlds. "The human response was unexpected," noted his second-in-command. "Most species panic when we arrive. These creatures seem defiant." "Defiance born of ignorance," Tyke dismissed. "They have no concept of our capabilities." A junior officer approached with a data pad. "Commander, our scans are detecting unusual energy readings from the planet's surface and near orbit." Tyke glanced at the readings with mild curiosity. "Likely they're primitive defense systems activating, nothing that concerns us." "Sir," the officer persisted, "these readings don't match any known human technology in our database, and there appear to be significantly more orbital installations than our initial scans indicated." For the first time, a flicker of concern crossed Tyke's features. "Show me." The main display updated to show hundreds of small objects in Earth orbit, previously classified as communication satellites or space debris. Now they were emitting energy signatures that seemed oddly familiar. "Magnify Sector 4, Tyke ordered. Sharply, the image zoomed in on what appeared to be a weather satellite. As they watched, panels shifted, revealing what was unmistakably a weapon system, one whose design bore striking similarities to collective technology. "Impossible," Tyke whispered. In the mountains of Switzerland, Dr. Cho stood in the control room of the European Space Agency's hidden facility. What the public knew as a research installation was actually one of 12 command centers for the Aegis system. On her command screen, the alien fleet's formation was clearly visible, now decelerating as they approached Earth orbit. "They're deploying smaller craft," her assistant reported. "Attack formation by the look of it." Dr. Cho nodded grimly. "They've made their choice." She opened a secure channel to the other command centers. "Aegis stations, this is European Command. The warning has been ignored. Implement Defense Protocol Alpha." Acknowledgements came in from around the world. North American Command, Asian Command, African Command, and others. Humanity's hidden shield was activating. In orbit, satellites that had been disguised for years began to transform. Solar panels retracted, revealing weapon ports. Communication dishes realigned into targeting arrays. What had appeared to be a fragmented, uncoordinated collection of individual satellites suddenly linked together into a synchronized defense network. On the ground, hidden installations powered up. In the Sahara Desert, massive doors slid open, in the sand, revealing launch platforms. Beneath the Amazon rainforest canopy, electromagnetic pulse generators hummed to life. In Antarctica, long-range sensors expanded from beneath the ice, their true purpose finally revealed. Commander Tyke stared at the updating tactical display with growing horror. The primitives had deceived them. Somehow, these humans possessed technology that should have been beyond their reach. Worse, they seemed to understand collective weaknesses in ways that suggested the lost scout ship, he realized suddenly. "Check the records. When did we lose contact with exploration?" "Vessel 347. His officer quickly accessed the database. 30 Earth years ago, Commander. It was presumed destroyed in an asteroid collision." "It crashed," Tyke said, understanding dawning. "They found it. They've been studying our technology for decades. In Washington, D.C., the President of the United States, stood in the Situation Room, watching as the alien fleet continued its approach despite the warning. Around him, military commanders waited for his order, an order that would formally begin humanity's first interstellar war. He thought of all the science fiction he'd read as a young man, stories where humanity either united against external threats or perished divided. Now, facing that very scenario, he was grateful for the foresight that had led to unprecedented international cooperation, even if it had happened in secret. "They've had their warning," he said quietly. "Launch the counterattack." Across Earth, humanity's hidden defenses powered to full capacity. In orbit, disguised weapons platforms locked onto alien targets. The trap was set. The aliens had come expecting easy conquest. Instead, they were about to learn why challenging humanity on its home turf was the last mistake many would ever make. The first shots of humanity's war against the stars were not fired from the ground, but from the seemingly innocent satellites orbiting Earth. As the stellar collective's attack ships descended toward their first target, a naval base in the Indian Ocean, they were met with a blinding flash of light. "What was that?" demanded Commander Tyke, shielding his eyes from the sudden glare on the main view screen. His tactical officer frantically worked the controls. "Some kind of directed energy weapon, sir. It's using our own shield frequency." "Impossible," Tyke thought. No primitive species could possibly understand the complex modulation patterns of collective shield technology. Yet the evidence was clear, as 3 of their smaller attack craft suddenly lost power, their shields completely bypassed by weapons that shouldn't exist. On Earth, Colonel Doe stood in the underground command center of the Pacific Defense Network, watching the battle unfold on massive screens. Around him, military personnel from a dozen nations worked in perfect coordination, the result of joint training exercises conducted in secret for years. "Shield-penetrating beams are effective," reported a young lieutenant. "Enemy vessels are adjusting frequencies, but our systems are adapting faster than they can compensate." Colonel Doe nodded with grim satisfaction. "Activate the orbital defense grid, full spectrum." Across Earth's orbit, hundreds of disguised platforms that had masqueraded as communications satellites, space telescopes, and even debris suddenly activated. What appeared to be solar panels reconfigured into energy collectors. Innocuous weather sensors transformed into targeting arrays. The seemingly fragmented collection of orbital objects revealed itself as an integrated defensive shield encircling the entire planet. The collective's initial attack force found itself caught in a crossfire, unlike anything they had encountered in centuries of conquest. In her laboratory beneath Mount Fuji, Professor Kang watched the data stream in with a mixture of pride and anxiety. For 28 years, she had led the team that reverse-engineered technology from the crashed alien scout ship. Most of her colleagues had thought she was wasting her career on theoretical applications of seemingly impossible technology. Now, her life's work was humanity's best hope. "The phase inverters are working perfectly," her assistant noted, pointing to efficiency readings that exceeded their simulations. "They won't be for long," Professor Kang replied. "These aliens will adapt. That's what advanced species do." She opened a secure channel to all defense commands. "This is Research Lead Kang. Begin cycling through all shield frequencies according to Protocol Theta. Don't give them time to analyze our patterns." Aboard the collective flagship, chaos reigned. Commander Tyke watched in disbelief as his first wave of attackers was decimated by weapons that shouldn't exist on such a primitive world. "Pull back the attack force," he ordered. "Regroup at lunar orbit distance." His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Commander, I've analyzed their weapon signatures. They're derivatives of our own technology. The energy modulation, the targeting systems, they're cruder versions of our standard armaments." Take's eyes narrowed. "The lost scout ship. They didn't just find it. They understood it." He slammed his fist against the command console. "How? It took our ancestors thousands of years to develop these technologies. On a military airfield in Brazil, pilots rushed to specially modified aircraft. These weren't ordinary jets, but hybrid vehicles incorporating principles learned from studying the alien propulsion system. Captain Rui climbed into the cockpit of the lead craft, a sleek black shape that hardly resembled conventional human aircraft. "Remember your training," the squadron commander said through the radio as the hangar doors opened. "These craft can reach low orbit, but life support is limited to 40 minutes. Get up there, do damage, and get back down." Captain Rui felt a moment of terror mixed with fierce pride. She had been selected from thousands of candidates for this program, pilots who could handle the extreme G-forces these hybrid craft generated. The physiological enhancements she'd undergone were experimental, rushed into service when it became clear the aliens were actually coming. "Humanity's first spacefighter squadron launching now," she reported, feeling the incredible thrust push her back into her seat as the aircraft shot forward at speeds no human had experienced before. In New York, ordinary citizens watched the sky with a mixture of fear and wonder. Strange lights flashed among the stars, brief, colorful bursts that marked the deaths of ships and the people or creatures within them. The government had finally announced the truth, that Earth was under attack, but also that humanity was fighting back with technologies kept secret for decades. 8-year-old Haru pointed at the sky from his apartment window. "Look, Grandpa, are those the aliens?" His grandfather, a retired physicist who had unknowingly contributed equations used in the defense system's targeting algorithms, put an arm around the boy's shoulders. "Those are the lights of history changing, Haru. No matter what happens, remember this night. This is when everything changed for humankind." Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, General Tay monitored the battle from the Southern Hemisphere Command Center. The walls were lined with screens showing real-time data from around the planet and near-Earth space. "They're regrouping," he observed, pulling back to a defensive posture. Director Hyun's face appeared on the main communication screen. "The first wave was just testing our capabilities. They'll be back with a more coordinated attack once they analyze what happened. Then we should strike now," General Tay urged. "While they're disorganized, reveal the orbital platforms." Director Hyun's expression was grave. "The Security Council has approved. You may deploy Stage 2 defenses." In orbit, what appeared to be standard space stations, scientific outposts and commercial manufacturing platforms suddenly began to move. Thrusters that had never been publicly acknowledged pushed these structures out of their expected positions. Panels opened to reveal weapon systems far more powerful than the initial defensive grid. Commander Tyke was receiving damage reports when his sensor officer shouted in alarm. "Commander, multiple new weapon signatures detected. They're orbital structures. They're combat platforms." Tyke rushed to the tactical display. The humans had hidden their true capabilities in plain sight, constructing what appeared to be civilian infrastructure that was actually a military system of unprecedented scale for such a young species. "All vessels, evasive maneuvers," he ordered. "Form defensive formation Delta." But the order came too late for many. The newly revealed platforms fired in perfect synchronization, targeting the largest collective vessels with concentrated energy beams that overwhelmed even their most powerful shields. In orbit, Captain Rui led her squadron of hybrid fighters against the smaller alien craft. The human vessels were less advanced, but piloted with a desperate aggression that caught the aliens off guard. What the human craft lacked in technology, they made up for in maneuverability and the sheer determination of their pilots. "These aren't the actions of a species encountering advanced technology for the first time," Tyke realized, watching the tactical display with growing dread. "They've been preparing for this. They knew we were coming. Or at least, they knew someone would come eventually." His communications officer turned from her station. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the planet." On screen appeared a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Her expression was stern but not angry. "This is Director Hyun of Earth's Global Defense Initiative. Your attack has been repelled. We have demonstrated only a fraction of our defensive capabilities. Withdraw your forces immediately or face complete destruction." Tyke stared at the human with new respect and growing fear. In centuries of conquest, the collective had never encountered a species so well prepared for their arrival. They had assumed humanity's technological development followed a standard progression. They had been catastrophically wrong. "How did you obtain our technology?" he demanded. Director Hyun's expression didn't change. "We recovered your scout ship 30 years ago. We learned. We prepared. We unified. Unlike other worlds you've conquered, we didn't wait to be saved. We saved ourselves. In command centers around the world, humans watched this exchange with bated breath. The aliens were retreating, pulling back beyond the moon's orbit. The first battle for Earth had been won, but everyone knew this was only the beginning. The collective would return with greater numbers, having learned from this initial defeat. Yet for the first time in the history of their conquests, they would do so with something unfamiliar: doubt. Humanity had surprised them once. They could do it again. The stars looked different from space. Captain Sun had spent thousands of hours in flight simulators preparing for this moment, but nothing compared to the reality of commanding an actual spacecraft beyond Earth's atmosphere. The vessel beneath him hummed with power that would have seemed magical just decades ago. "All systems nominal," reported his second-in-command. "The fleet is in formation and awaiting your order." Through the viewport, Sun could see Earth hanging like a blue jewel against the blackness. Around him, 27 vessels of various sizes moved in perfect coordination. Humanity's secret space fleet, built in hidden facilities beneath mountains and oceans, assembled in orbit under the guise of International Space Station modules and private space tourism projects. The truth was far more impressive. For years, nations had pooled resources and knowledge, setting aside centuries of conflict to prepare for this moment. What they lacked in advanced technology, they made up for with ingenuity and numbers. "Begin approach," Sun ordered. "Maintain stealth protocols until we reach the designated strike point." The fleet moved silently toward the dark side of the moon, where the Stellar Collective had established a temporary base to lick their wounds and plan their next assault. They hadn't expected humans to have spacecraft capable of pursuing them. That assumption would cost them dearly. In the war room beneath Geneva, General Tay studied the holographic display, showing the positions of both human and alien vessels. Representatives from every major nation stood around the table, faces illuminated by the blue glow of the projection. "The Sword of Dawn fleet will engage in exactly 17 minutes, he announced. "Once the attack begins, we expect the collective to call for reinforcements. Our deep space monitoring stations have already detected additional vessels approaching from the outer system." President Wu of the Asian Alliance looked troubled. "Are we certain this counterattack is wise? We successfully defended Earth. Perhaps we should focus on strengthening our position rather than taking the fight to them." Director Hyun shook her head. "The psychological impact is crucial. Every species they've conquered before us submitted after the first demonstration of force. By taking the fight to them, we show them humanity responds differently." Additionally, added Professor Kang, who had joined via secure video link from her laboratory, "our analysis of their communications indicates their reinforcements are still at least 6 hours from arrival. This may be our only opportunity to strike while they're vulnerable." Aboard the Collective's command vessel, Commander Tak was facing the most difficult report of his career. On the view screen, the High Council of the Stellar Collective, 5, ancient beings who had overseen centuries of expansion, waited in ominous silence. "The primitives were prepared," Tyke finally said. "They possessed defensive technology derived from our own. We believe they recovered the scout ship lost 30 cycles ago." The eldest council member leaned forward, his elongated features showing rare emotion. "Her single scout ship should not provide sufficient information for a pre-spaceflight species to develop effective countermeasures against our fleet." "They are coming back," he continued, his tone grave. "The reinforcement fleet will arrive within days with forces 5 times larger than the first wave, but they will find a different Earth than they expect. In orbit above Earth, the evidence of humanity's rapid advancement was clear. Shipyards that had been hidden beneath the ocean's surfaces were now in plain view, constructing vessels that incorporated technology captured from the collective ships. Defense platforms that had been disguised as satellites now openly displayed their weapons. Nations that had hoarded resources now pooled them freely in the face of extinction. In his cell beneath the Pacific Ocean, Commander Tyke watched these developments through a video feed provided by his captors. They treated him with surprising dignity. No torture, no starvation, just isolation and constant questions about collective weaknesses and technologies. The door opened, and Director Hyun entered, carrying a data tablet. "Your reinforcements will arrive in approximately 62 hours, she stated without preamble. "We've tracked their approach since they passed the orbit of Saturn." Tayek regarded her with a mixture of respect and bitterness. "You cannot hope to defeat them. The first wave was merely an expeditionary force. What comes next will darken your skies." Director Hyun placed the tablet before him, displaying images of the Collective's empire, images taken from his own ship's database. "We've been reviewing your records," she said, "in particular, the history of species who resisted collective rule." Tyke's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "They all fell eventually." "But they fell alone," Director Hyun countered. "Each species fought in isolation, unaware that others had resisted before them or were resisting elsewhere." She tapped the screen, bringing up a new image, a map showing subspace communication signals spreading outward from Earth, reaching toward distant stars. "We've been broadcasting," she explained, "using the communication protocols we found in your ship, sending a message to every world in the Collective's domain." Tyke felt a cold dread spreading through him. "What message?" "The truth," she replied simply, "that the Collective can be defeated, that Earth is fighting back, that we invite any who would be free to join us." Across the galaxy, those broadcasts were finding receptive audiences. On worlds long conquered, resistance movements stirred to life. On planets recently subjugated, slaves sabotaged vital equipment. In the Collective's own shipyards, workers belonging to conquered species began quiet acts of defiance. Minor manufacturing defects, slightly miscalibrated weapons, navigation systems with subtle errors. In the grand chamber of the Collective's High Council, the 5 ancient beings who had directed the Empire's expansion for millennia faced an unprecedented crisis. "Reports of unrest are spreading," said one counselor, his voice trembling with rare emotion. 17 mining worlds have reported production stoppages. 3 shipyards report unexplained accidents. The eldest council member, who had overseen the conquest of 32 worlds in his lifetime, leaned forward. "All because of these humans. They must be eliminated," declared another counselor. "Not just conquered, eradicated. Their world burned to ash as an example." The eldest was silent for a long moment. "For the first time in our history, we face a species that was prepared for us, that anticipated our coming, that united despite their differences to resist us, and now they spread dangerous ideas among our subjects," added the female counselor. "Ideas of freedom, of resistance. Designate Earth as a Class 5 prohibited zone," the eldest finally ordered. "Classify humans as a predator species. Quarantine." "Their entire system," the others stared in shock. Never before had the Collective retreated from a planned conquest. "And the fleet already en route?" one asked. "Recall them," the eldest commanded. "We cannot risk further defeats being witnessed by our subjects." On Earth, the waiting was the hardest part. Families huddled together, watching the skies. Military personnel stood at their posts, ready for the battle that would determine humanity's fate. Scientists worked around the clock, adapting captured alien technology to Earth's defense systems. Then, without warning, the impossible happened. The reinforcement fleet, detected approaching Mars, suddenly changed course, moving away from Earth back toward the outer system. In the United Nations Command Center, Admiral Park watched in disbelief as the tracking systems confirmed what seemed unthinkable. "They're retreating," he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. "All of them. They're leaving the solar system." A cheer began, tentative at first, then growing in strength as the realization spread. Humanity had won. Not just a battle, but the war. But the true victory was only beginning to unfold across the galaxy. In the days and weeks that followed, Earth received transmissions from a dozen worlds, secret messages sent by species inspired by humanity's resistance. They sought guidance, alliance, technology, the means to throw off their own oppressors. 1. Month after the Collective's retreat, Admiral Park addressed the United Nations again. Behind him, the screen displayed a map of nearby stars, with dozens of points marked in green, worlds that had reached out to Earth. "We stand at a crossroads," he told the assembled leaders. For centuries, we imagined our first contact with alien life would change us forever. We never imagined that we would change them. He gestured to the star map. These are not just potential allies. They are beings looking to us for leadership, for hope. The collective believed we were primitives, unworthy of anything but servitude. Instead, we have become something they never anticipated: liberators. The great hall fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Humanity, barely united itself, was now being called upon to help free the galaxy. They set their sights on Earth, Admiral Park continued, but our warning shook the galaxy, and now the stars themselves are within our reach. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.